Pakistan is tottering and appears headed for a collapse. Even the expected IMF loan will not save it. But can the world allow a nuclear Pakistan to fail? Will Pakistan's nukes save the country from a disaster? First, let's understand the gravity of the problem in Pakistan. The story unfolding in Pakistan has a striking and worrying resemblance to Sri Lanka. Consider this. Even sipping a cup of tea is a luxury in Pakistan now. I appeal to the nation to cut down on the consumption of tea by 1 to 2 cups because we import tea on loan. Pakistan Federal Minister of Planning Ehsan Iqbal told the nation on 14 June. Indeed, Islamabad is confronted with a massive socio-economic crisis. The global commodity price surge has stoked runaway inflation. It's at about 25% right now. Mounting dollar payments for the country's food and energy import bill has eroded forex reserves and the value of the Pakistan rupee. Moreover, debt servicing costs and rating downgrades have further added to the weakness of the currency, which has tumbled about 25% against the dollar in 2022 alone. It has recovered some ground in August on hopes of an IMF bailout. Recently, Pakistan's Finance Minister Miftah Ismail explained the daunting challenge before the Shehbaz Sharif-led coalition. The country needs $41 billion in forex reserves over the next year or so. Of this, $21 billion is needed for debt repayments, $12 billion for current account deficit financing, and another $8 billion to replenish foreign exchange reserves. At this point, Pakistan only has forex reserves of about $9 billion, about a month and a half worth of imports. Now you can clearly see that an IMF loan alone will not bail out Pakistan. Meanwhile, Pakistan has now begun meeting the preconditions set by the IMF for a funding lifeline. Recently, it has raised fuel prices substantially, further worsening the standards of living in the country. Some experts claim millions may have slipped into poverty because of the increase in the cost of living. Closures of cab services, restaurants, and small businesses unable to afford the prohibitive price rise in the domestic economy have been reported in a section of the local media. Many are now worried about social and economic unrest, again pointing out the similarities to Sri Lanka. But the silver lining for Pakistan is that the IMF has now stated that Pakistan has met all its preconditions for the $1.2 billion financial assistance. How many times will the IMF come to Pakistan's rescue? In 2019, Pakistan got financial assistance from the IMF for the 22nd time. Now, while a $1.2 billion lifeline is quite inadequate to bail out Pakistan, it is likely to open more funding options for Islamabad, from allies to other multinational donors. Allies such as Iran, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and of course, its all-weather friend China may have to extend loans and grants to Islamabad to prevent it from defaulting on its external debt obligations. Meanwhile, Ismail has asked fellow Pakistanis to brace for bad days but maintained the country is on the right track. But can the world afford to let a nuclear Pakistan fail? More so, given that Taliban-ruled Afghanistan is its neighbor. Very unlikely. Both the superpowers, the US and China, will be loath to let a nuclear-armed Pakistan collapse given its geopolitical significance. Indeed, if it were to happen, it will probably be seen as Biden's biggest foreign policy disaster by most Americans, much worse than the Afghanistan fiasco. And China has vital interest in Pakistan through the ambitious China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Instead, the global community is likely to push Pakistan to adopt reforms and manage its resources more efficiently than it has done so far. The IMF is demanding deep-seated reforms in Pakistan, from higher taxes to cutting subsidies. The goal is to push Pakistan to raise resources internally, cut dependence on dollar debt, and move away from the politics of handouts and populism. So far, Pakistan seems to be complying with the IMF. it seems even desperate for aid, and understandably so. In fact, some media reports suggested Pakistan may have led the US to Al-Qaeda's Zawahiri's hideout to get US support for assistance from the IMF. Still, Pakistan's track record is not inspiring. Pakistan has often reneged on its commitments in the middle of aid programs, but perhaps policymakers in Islamabad will realize time is not on this side anymore. Pakistan over the decades has destroyed its economy with its mammoth military expenditure as it tried to match India's military muscle. It pursued an ambitious nuclear program, with former Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto once famously asserting, "We'll eat grass but make the bomb." That's how it has turned out. Unfortunately for Pakistan, Bhutto proved prescient. A US ally through the Cold War, Islamabad depended on generous aid from Washington and international donors like the IMF to keep its economy afloat. In a changed post-Cold War era, the US has found a new ally in India, and Pakistan has turned to China, Saudi Arabia, the UAE and others to sustain its debt-fueled economy. Through all this, Pakistan has remained an agri- and aid-dependent economy. Political instability has meant Pakistan never really invested in the building blocks of an economic boom, such as robust infrastructure, independent institutions, a vibrant domestic industry, or even a vibrant democracy. In fact, Pakistan's crippling power shortages have been big stumbling blocks for the domestic manufacturing industry.